While I love the original Resident Evil and its sequel, my personal favourite of the PS1 trilogy is 1999's Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I truly feel that it stands not only as one of the best Resident Evils ever made, but as one of the best horror games ever made. There seem to be some fans that view it as a lesser entry, especially since it was basically a side game that got upgraded to mainline status, but I think that's unfair. While the next main game in the series, Code Veronica, expands the story further and is more ambitious, RE3 is not some insignificant stop on your journey through the franchise. It's a brilliant game and an important one in the overall lore of the series. If you aren't convinced of that now, I hope by the end of this video that you will be. Serving as both a prequel and a sequel to Resident Evil 2, RE3 starts off 24 hours before the events of the second game. It follows STARS member Jill Valentine, one of the dual protagonists of RE1, as she tries to make her way out of Raccoon City after the zombie outbreak. She must overcome many obstacles, and some rather big ones at that, to make her last escape. Sure, this story may be similar to that of RE2, and it is fairly simple, but it also does enough unique things to make it stand out. Quite soon into the game, Jill has to work with some of Umbrella's paramilitary unit in order to survive. By this point in the franchise, the extent of Umbrella's evil is well known, and so having you work with them temporarily out of convenience is an interesting subversion. The motivations and personalities of the surviving members of this paramilitary unit only becomes clear as the game progresses, and so their inclusion creates mystery and tension. As the story goes on, we learn that Nikolai, the sergeant of the unit, is a rather ruthless character who's doing Umbrella's dirty work and is willing to sacrifice as many lives as it takes for him to gain power and wealth. He tries to kill Jill, and depending on the ending, either escapes or dies. On the flip side of that, the paramilitary unit member Carlos is similar to Jill in many ways. He has empathy, is willing to put himself at risk to save others, and is a strong soldier. He doesn't realise he's being used by Umbrella, and he ends up being vital to Jill's survival and escape.
Rescuing you is becoming a full-time job.
Unlike the older sister type relationship Claire has with Sherry, or the romantic relationship Leon has with Ada, Jill and Carlos develop a strong bond that feels like something different. They are near equals in terms of ability, and nothing about their interactions feels overtly romantic, more like two people who care about each other and both want to survive. Outside of Jill's escape and the further machinations of Umbrella, the game also adds a vital new piece to the overall RE puzzle. The government deciding to blow Raccoon City off the map with a missile is now an iconic part of the lore of the franchise, and it helps to make the last act of this game feel so much more exciting and epic. It's such a powerful way to end the PS1 trilogy, and it adds a brilliant finality to Raccoon City. I mean, look at how completely it's destroyed. There's no way any of this will be left standing afterwards. This ending makes the journey we've been on throughout the game feel so big. We see the missile go past the clock tower, the RPD, the various streets of the city and the cable car before its absolutely eviscerating damage is shown. It really manages to feel both grand and sad. On the latter note, I want to explore another part of the game's story, one which I feel gets overlooked. RE3, more so than the previous entries, portrays the utter tragedy of Umbrella's actions and the humanity of Raccoon City's inhabitants. This game seeks to show that these people are victims. Right away, the opening monologue from Jill establishes that the citizens' lack of courage in opposing the iron grip that Umbrella had on the city led to their destruction. There is a sense that if they had fought more, then these events could have been avoided. Following that monologue, a brilliant FMV quickly establishes the extent of the monster's takeover of the city. At the same time, we see numerous civilians, police, and Umbrella mercenaries fall victim to the endless hordes of the undead. Not long into the game itself, we meet our first survivor, Dario. Too distraught by the loss of his daughter to follow Jill, he locks himself behind a pair of doors and refuses to leave. Later on, you can return to this location and find Dario's bloodied corpse, as well as a file from him talking about how his family had been killed and how he regrets his life choices and wishes he became a writer. While we can view Dario as a somewhat selfish character with his focus on himself rather than his family, we don't really know how much of his words is a response to the trauma of losing them. Not long after we meet Dario, we hear the scared scream of a girl. If we follow it, we come across her trying to outrun some monsters. Chase after her and you'll find her dead body with a zombie standing over it. We come across two files, one from a member of the RPD and one from a mercenary, both talking about how they would rather take their own lives than be killed by the monsters. The former also speaks of the author's regret over not having the courage to help a friend who had previously saved him. A bit later into the game, we can see two different scenes of Carlos and fellow Umbrella's mercenary Mikhail showing their humanity. In the first scene, Carlos is confronted by another member of his unit named Murphy, who's beginning to turn into a zombie. Murphy pleads for Carlos to kill him before he fully transforms, but Carlos is incredibly reluctant to do so. After giving in and taking Murphy out, he falls to his knees in regret at what he's had to do. In the second scene, we see a very wounded Mikhail taking out zombies. He feels distraught that he isn't doing enough after his comrades were wiped out by them. Jill reminds him that the monsters too are victims.
But can't you see those monsters are also the victims of Umbrella?
At the clock tower, we come across one of my favourite bits of side content and a brilliant piece of tragic storytelling. We find a dead girl being held by a dead mercenary in the corner of a room. If we examine them, we can read a file from the mercenary that says the girl reminded him of his sister who had starved to death. The girl didn't want to leave because her father refused to go, not wanting to abandon the city where his wife rests in peace. It seems that despite the mercenary having done some awful things, he showed care towards the girl in his final moments and tried to protect her, perhaps hoping to save her in a way he couldn't with his sister. All of this and so much more throughout RE3 really shows the humanity of the Raccoon City incident's victims. There's such a sense of loss, regret and fear permeating the whole game. The tragedy of these events seems to find an expression in the aptly named piece of music, The City of Ruin, a haunting and melancholic piece that makes Raccoon City feel like an utterly hopeless location where the dead roam the streets like restless ghosts. Finishing off with this thematic concept, we have the closing monologue in which what appears to be a radio announcer tells us about the destruction of Raccoon City and how it is believed that the death toll passes 100,000. As the somber music plays, the final words of the game are,
"Our hearts go out to those poor civilians of Raccoon City."
While never detracting from Jill's overall story of trying to escape, this sadness about the denizens of Raccoon City is a central part of the game and provides it with a strong emotional core. After that depressing deep dive into its most serious theme, let's talk about the game's best remembered element and its titular villain, Nemesis. RE2 introduced the Stalker-type enemy into the franchise with Mr. X. He was rather plodding in his movements and was fairly easy to either avoid or take down. While he added unpredictability and tension to the game, his appearances feel somewhat scripted in hindsight. Nemesis is like him, but on steroids. Not Mr. X, but Mr. XXL, if you will. His theme music is more intense, he's far faster, he roars, he tosses you about as if you were a small toy, and he can wield a rocket launcher with one arm. All the while, he utters a single word throughout the game, a word that reflects the people he's been programmed to wipe out. On top of this, he seems to be unstoppable. No matter what, he comes back again and again like a particularly vicious moth to a flame. Not only that, but every fight with him is at least slightly challenging, requiring a bit more skill than the previous RE bosses, which largely consisted of standing in one place and unloading your ammo before having to run to another spot and doing the same. Nemesis gives so much character to RE3, and his presence still adds a strong tension to this day. I'll talk more about him in the gameplay section, but what I want to add here is that he gives Jill a powerful adversary. His relentless pursuit of her makes the entire game feel like an endless conflict between these two. You have to fight him 3 times throughout, and you can face him even more than that in optional battles. This builds Nemesis up as such a formidable foe, perhaps the best the series has ever had. In many ways it's an extension of Jill's fight with Umbrella, since they are the ones behind the creature, but even outside of that larger conflict, he feels so special. The brilliance of Nemesis is established early on. Near the beginning we see Brad, one of the survivors of the first game and a fellow STARS member, running away from some zombies. Once we eventually catch up to him in a bar, he informs us in rather vague terms that
he's coming for us.
He speaks about Nemesis almost like he's an otherworldly force that can't be stopped. He tells us there's no escape and that we're both gonna die. Shortly after that we meet Brad again just outside the RPD. He tries reaching us when suddenly this hulking great beast comes out of nowhere and brutally slaughters him. The game has barely begun, and not only is the strength and size of Nemesis established right away, but by having him take out Brad, who was so vital to the events of the first game with very little fanfare, it feels like nothing is off limits from here on. What a great introduction. Again and again Nemesis shows up throughout the game, creating complete chaos repeatedly. He causes the death of Mikhail, he blows up the escaped chopper, and depending on your choices he can also kill Nikolai. He is a brutal pursuer, one that doesn't give up, and he becomes less and less human as the game goes on. There is a reason that Jill's famous final line to Nemesis is so great. By the time she unloads a magnum into him, you feel like you've been to hell and fought the devil himself. It is one of the most cathartic moments in all of gaming.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Before moving on to the gameplay, I want to talk about other elements of the story that I like. Throughout RE3, we are given multiple live selections. What we choose will affect what comes after it. For instance, we'll meet certain characters in different locations, hear unique dialogue, and Nikolai will either live or die. You can also get a different ending depending on your choices, with one seeing Carlos fly us away and the other having Barry from RE1 as the pilot instead. What's great about this is that you can go through the game multiple times and still come across new scenes, helping replays feel so much more rewarding. I also like the way the game builds its world and the foreshadowing within it. Almost at the start we see a postcard for the clock tower long before we get there. We now know this is a location in the game's universe, something which is also done with the cable car, where it's mentioned in a file that the mayor worked on it as an engineer. While wandering the streets of Raccoon City, we can see Carlos running away from the undead both before we meet him and after. We also at one point hear Nikolai fighting it out with some zombies. Both of these things help the world to feel more immersive. The mercenaries you're working with are out there too, and you can actually see and hear them. Just before we enter the RPD, there's a broken fire hydrant shooting water into the air. The sky in the distance is dark, but with some light on the clouds. Once we leave, the night has grown older. The water from the hydrant has stopped, and the sky in the background is pitch black. Before we meet the Gravedigger, aka the giant worm, we can find its molted skin in a small sewer section. And before reaching the facility that makes up the final section of the game, we can read a fax from Umbrella HQ that lets us know the city is going to be obliterated. Both of these things, just two examples among many, help to build up the threats ahead. In the Gravedigger case, they tell us another monster we've yet to see is out there, and in the case of the fax, it creates an anxiety over the destruction coming our way. There are also some nice parallels in the game's story. Like, did you ever notice the game starts with a monologue followed by a helicopter flying overhead, and it ends with a helicopter leaving Raccoon City followed by another monologue? Also, during the scene where Jill thinks she's about to be saved at the clock tower, we get this shot of the rocket fired by Nemesis passing by her, a nice mirror of this shot in the final cutscene of the missile heading towards the city. Then there's the way the game manages to link itself with RE2. In one of the files we get a reference to the giant alligator in that game. Just prior to the final Nemesis boss, we see the corpses of the 5 remaining tyrants who were in the containers being carried by the helicopter that dropped Mr. X. In fact, we even see one of those containers. It's a great piece of visual storytelling and a nice way of making 3 feel more organically connected to the universe of the franchise. On the face of it, RE3 follows the classic formula of RE1 and RE2 with limited inventory, limited healing items, limited ammo, backtracking, tank controls and fixed camera angles. What helps to set it apart though are a number of new features. You can now 180-degree turn. This is a vital new addition and perfectly implemented. The game has many more enemies than the first two, and they are often much quicker as well. It's the most action-heavy entry yet, and so those sudden turns will get you out of a lot of sticky situations. Then you have the dodge mechanic. This is also extremely helpful, especially when fighting Nemesis, but its execution is far from flawless. There's no invincibility frames when doing it. You can often dodge and then get hit by an even deadlier move. You can dodge in a tight area and still get hit by the move you're supposed to have avoided, and to top it all off, they made the buttons to dodge the same as shooting and aiming. This sometimes leads to you doing it when you didn't even mean to, which proves helpful in some cases and not so helpful in others. That's not to say it's an awful mechanic though. It's clunky, but still welcome. If you get good at it, it can be really useful, and there is definitely a satisfaction to when you pull it off correctly. Another new addition is the ability to shoot objects and cause damage to enemies near to said object. This is a lot of fun. You can shoot many different things throughout, which often comes in handy, while also helping to make the world feel more interactive. You often have to weigh when it's right to use these objects and how best to maximize damage, adding an element of skill to it. Also making its first appearance here is gunpowder, which you can use to make 7 different types of ammunition. While you'll still find normal bullets throughout RE3, the inclusion of gunpowder adds a much welcomed variety to the game. It means that you can mix up how you play across different runs considerably. Maybe at one point you'll stick to making handgun and shotgun ammo, meaning you're likely to use these weapons more, but on the next playthrough you may prioritise the grenade launcher, leading that to become your primary weapon. Also, if you create enough handgun or shotgun ammo, you'll get special rounds for both of these. This also helps to keep things fresh even after you've gone through the game several times. This sort of variety also makes itself felt in the randomisation you'll find throughout. Weapons, ammo, monsters and healing items can all spawn in different locations. You often don't know what you'll be up against from one room to the next. You may have thought you'd see some zombies, but it ended up being hunters instead, or brain suckers in place of spiders. There's a window you can go past where either dogs or crows can jump out of. And it's not just in these things where variety makes itself felt. The various live selections, as well as where you choose to go first when collecting key items, can affect not just the cutscenes you'll get, but also things like if Nemesis will show up there or not. For example, you can go through this game many times and never even know that he can spawn at the substation. To have him there requires you to have played in a particular way. You can also go to specific areas that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, depending on your actions. If you meet Carlos at the Raccoon Press rather than the restaurant, you'll have an option to jump out a window to escape Nemesis, which has you end up in this small alleyway. However, if you chose to hide instead, you won't see that area, but you will see Nemesis knocked unconscious. Even something so small like the advert on the television that you have to use for a password can change. The music, the name of the product, and the images used have 3 different options. It may last all of 5 seconds, but it's such a cool little detail. All of this, and there is so much more, adds an incredible amount of replayability to the game. You get the sense that no 2 playthroughs will ever be the same. Adding further to the replayability is Nemesis himself. If you beat him in the optional fights, you can get rewards. While he's fairly tough, especially in the first few battles, it's great to be able to get the items he drops. When you've gone through the game several times normally, trying to best Nemesis almost whenever you see him feels like a further incentive to play again, and he provides the first genuine challenge as far as bosses go in the series. Speaking of bosses, the only ones in this game are Nemesis himself and the Gravedigger. What I love about these fights are that they each feel unique. For the first time in the franchise, it's more than just standing in a place and shooting, though there is still a bit of that. The Gravedigger boss appears, fittingly, in a graveyard. It's a rather narrow area, and you have to pay attention to the ground to see where it's moving, shooting it whenever it comes above the surface. At the end, you can shoot some lights into a bit of water to electrocute it, or just finish it off normally. There are 3 non-optional Nemesis boss fights in the game. The first of these is in the courtyard of the clock tower, in the ruins of the helicopter he's just shot down. It's the most simple of all the bosses, but it is possible for Nemesis to have a rocket launcher, and no matter what, you'll be poisoned, meaning it's hard to tell how hurt you are, as Jill will always be clutching her stomach. The second fight is in a waste room where you can shoot various valves that will release acid onto Nemesis. You have to line it up well because he is smart enough to move back if he sees it shooting out, but it's an amazing visual when you get it right. His body, which is already looking more monstrous than before, falls apart as the acid hits it. Look how his head literally comes off here. Also noticeable is that his moveset is quite different compared to the first fight. He'll use his tentacles a lot now, and so it's not a simple case of repeating what you did there. The final fight is with an almost rabid dog version of Nemesis who is barely recognisable. A complete monstrosity with a growl that sounds like a puma and a demon had a baby. Here he spews acid at you, and you have to push in 3 batteries to activate an extremely powerful railgun that you then have to line him up with. These 4 boss battles, as you see, have their unique qualities and own personality. I love how much differences they added to each one. There's also strong anxiety throughout RE3. Nemesis follows you incessantly in this game, and nothing quite creates tension like hearing him come through a door and roar as his music starts. You soon see and hear him running after you, and it's a strong panic to try and get to the next location before he lands a hit. The way Nemesis is handled makes it feel like you're never safe, like you never know when he'll pop up and try to kill you. This, combined with the other enemies and their randomization, means RE3 is the most intense game in the series yet. There are a lot of different monsters in RE3, and they can all be pretty vicious in their own ways. Zombies often come in groups, brain suckers grab onto you, and dogs can nibble away at your health in no time. The Hunter makes a return, and it's just as vicious as it was in the first game. During a brilliant introduction cutscene in the hospital during Carlos's section, the power of it is established in less than 5 seconds as it decapitates a zombie with ease. Before you've even had time to fully process what you just saw, it's running at Carlos ready to make him its next victim. Outside of all of this combat, also making a return in RE3 are puzzles. Not only do they help to provide moments of relief among the barrage of enemies, but it also adds something different to a game that's very action heavy. Thankfully, these are the best collection of them yet. I love the concept behind the music puzzle in the clock tower, in which you have to move various switches to create a piece of music that aligns with the melody you just heard. Also brilliant conceptually is the water sample puzzle at the end that everyone seems to struggle with, but that I've always found easy and really fun. While these are my favourites, there are several other puzzles throughout that require you to use some brain power without ever being ridiculous. Each is interesting in its own way. They are also very nicely spread out over the game's runtime, and none of them require the long pushing sections that you found in the first 2 games. Files also make a return, and just like the puzzles, they are spread out really well and add breaks between the action. If you read all of them in the correct order, you'll unlock Jill's diary, which is a great reward. In it, she explains why she stayed in Raccoon City, as well as a bunch of other things. There's also a part of it that makes me laugh. In the diary, Jill talks about Chris hitting a cop because he accidentally splashed Chris's face with coffee. I have many questions, like how on earth do you accidentally splash someone's face with coffee, and was the coffee hot? Because if so, I'd be pretty annoyed too if it got on my face. Poor Chris is lucky he didn't need medical attention after that. Not quite as tragic as the Raccoon City or Mansion incidents, but never to be forgotten is the coffee in Chris's face incident. One of RE3's best elements is its atmosphere. The pre-rendered backgrounds here are used to absolute perfection. It feels like every single screen is just full of details that help immerse you in the experience. Throughout the game, you'll come across so many different types of areas too, and they all feel like they have love put into them. You can find posters scattered around the place, signs for various shops, crashed vehicles, corpses, webs littering a hall taken over by spiders, interesting statues in the park, an ivy plant from RE2 in the waste room where you fight Nemesis, and so much more. Every area is given personality, and as you run through the game, it is a complete joy to notice all these things that are being created to make the world feel believable. Also, I've heard the fact there's a poster for Biohazard 4 said a bunch of times, but less mentioned seems to be the gag above it where a lit up sign for the theatre only shows the letters that spell out Eater, which is amusing and quite fitting for a game about flesh-consuming zombies. It's not only in imagery that RE3 excels in, however. Both sound design and music are also brilliant here, whether it be the windy streets of Raccoon City, the distant cries of the undead, footsteps on broken glass, the screeches of hunters, or the deep growls of Nemesis. Everything here works to perfection. The music is also amazing. Everyone remembers the iconic Save Room theme and Nemesis's theme, but there's plenty of other great stuff here, like the previously mentioned City of Ruin, and the really unsettling piece that plays when you're doing this clock puzzle. Both have a very eerie quality. Then there's the smooth as hell piece that plays in the boutique, where you can change into different costumes after your first playthrough. Bizarrely, if you use this bit of music in a YouTube video, you get a copyright notice from a Russian rap group that sampled it in 2009. Unless the RE3 team created a time machine to steal music from late 2000s Russian hip-hop acts, I'm not sure that adds up, but what can you do? RE3 has near perfect pacing, a huge amount of variety, intense and fun gameplay, massive amounts of attention to detail, and an atmosphere full of creepiness. Of course, as with any game, it's not flawless. As mentioned, there are some problems with the dodge mechanic. Mikhail's Canadian voice actor seems to confuse Russian and Scottish sometimes.
There's no reason for any of us to take responsibility for this mess.
And there are also quite a few grammatical errors, such as this doctor saying hunger instead of hungry. A PhD, and he can't even get that right. The case could also be made that the game rehashes 2 a bit too much, though I would disagree. RE3 is one of my favourite Resident Evil games, and even after playing through it again several times for this video, not once was I bored. While I do plan on carrying on with the Resident Evil series, before I return with Code Veronica, I think I'll take a detour to visit some prehistoric friends of mine.